Yes, hello. I'm here with Ian, and we're going to summarize the Grimm's brother story, All Kinds of Fur. You might find it under the title in German that is something like Allerleirauh, and I'll spell that out in the show notes for my for those who can't understand what I'm saying. But I'll just give a quick summary, and then we'll talk about it. So a king whose wife surpassed all in beauty was dying. She got him to promise he would only remarry if he found a bride as beautiful as she, with golden hair like she had. After her death, he grieved for a long time, but after a period, his advisors said he must marry again, for they needed a queen. So they sent people all around to find one as beautiful with the same golden hair, but no one was found. Now, after some time, the king noticed his daughter was the most beautiful, with golden hair like her mother's, and he wanted to marry her. So, horrified, the advisors tried to put him off. They said, God has forbidden it. No good can come from such a crime, and the kingdom will be involved with the ruin. Now, the daughter requested that three dresses be made, one of gold, like the sun, another of silver, like the moon, and one shining like diamonds, as well as a mantle made from all the animals' furs of the kingdom, or mantle or cloak. At last, the best seamstresses and the hunters were able to fashion this garment and all the items. But instead of coming to his senses, the king beheld all of them and announced that their marriage would be the next day. So that night she fled with the gifts tucked into a nutshell, as well as her treasures of a golden ring, a tiny golden spindle, and a golden reel. She traveled through a forest that night and went to sleep in a tree hollow. She slept until full daylight. Now, another king's party found her and reported they'd found a strange animal to the king. The king had her chained to the carriage. Back at the castle, the men had her work in the kitchen and sleep in a dark nook. Now, when the king's ball happened, fur of all kinds, as we'll know her, and she was wearing that fur mantle, looking like a wild animal, asked and was given permission to go for half an hour to the ball. The chef threatened her lest she not return in time to sweep. She scrubbed the ash off herself and showed up at the ball in her silver dress, which shone like the moon. The king danced with her, and when he asked her name, she said she was the one people threw boots at. She escaped when he was looking around. Back at her dark nook, she disguised herself again. She made bread soup that the king really likes, and he summoned the cook who tried to claim that he himself cooked it, but the king knew better. The king found a ring in the bowl. The second night of the ball, Fur of All Kinds wears the silver like the moon dress, and she again escapes the king. She is ordered, sort of threatened by the cook to make the bread soup again, and she puts the golden spinning wheel in it. Now, the third night of the ball, she wore the sparkling like the stars dress, and the king made the ball extra long and put the ring on her finger this time. When she escaped again, she did not have time to take off the dress before cloaking herself in the fur mantle again. And when she is called in to the king this time, because of the soup, which now has the golden reel in it. He sees her white fingertip and the ring. And when she tries to escape, he holds on to her and he sees the star dress shining beneath her fur. And he tears off the fur when she tries to run. And they marry and live happily until they die. So that was a quick summary of Fur of All Kinds. But before we start discussion, do you want to add anything that I might have missed? Might have left some key parts of the story out.
No, I think you covered most of it. That I think, well, one thing was that the when she originally requests the three dresses and the cloak of all kinds of fur, she's desperately hoping that that won't be possible. So she creates this impossible task for the king to fulfill, her father king, the first king, and he somehow still manages to do it. And so she's sort of like, fuck, it didn't work. And so she grabs all the stuff and like runs to, save herself from the horror of it all. And then, but then the rest, there were a few things that I didn't remember, that I guess I had just skipped over. That she falls asleep in the hollow tree, that they talk about tying her to the cart. Um, I think the whole time she's covered in soot, so the whole time she's just dirty and filthy and in
Yeah.
the stinking, I assume the stinking fur.
Mm.
And so the way I take that is just very off-putting, sort of the
Mm.
opposite of the beautiful princess in the shining dress.
Yeah.
Um, and then the translation I had shows the third dress as being as bright as all the stars instead of as diamonds, but I can definitely see that being, um, kind of the same idea,
Yeah.
sparkly, shiny kind of a thing. So,
Yeah. In a
and
translation I had also, it said stars instead of diamonds. That
yeah.
might have just been a one translation that said diamonds or something like that. I feel like I've seen two versions where it said the stars, which kind of
Mm.
makes sense because the sun and the moon were the other dresses. So
Yeah, yeah. It's just neat that you can get the same feeling to a certain extent. You know, the patterns are there regardless of the words you put on it. Um,
yeah.
yeah, but yeah, they lived happily until they died.
Yeah.
It's a little more accurate than happily ever after.
Yeah. So
Yeah, but
I think you had kind of happened upon a podcast about this story. That's kind of why you suggested it to me.
mhm. Yeah, it's called this Jungian life.
Mm,
I obviously a play on This American Life, but it's the Jungian Carl Jung psychology. It's these three analysts trained in that tradition, and they talk about all kinds of stuff. But for this one, they were analyzing specifically this fairy tale, and how it relates to trauma. So as people may know, trauma is kind of my bag. I like that particular framework of understanding what's going on in here. So I listened to it, and I'd never heard the fairy tale before, and I was sort of shocked at the blatant incest themes in it, which, thankfully don't actually happen, but um, some pretty dark stuff right at the beginning. So I didn't know if it would be good to discuss, but they did a good job with it. And then I had some thoughts about it, and you also seemed like interested in it, thought it was going to be pretty rich. So I don't know, here we are.
yeah, yeah. No, I
Yeah.
did
What
think
did
it
what did you
was.
think when you first looked into it?
I mean, yeah, I did notice that kind of the dark theme, the father going after his daughter. Um, of course, this also reminds you a lot of Cinderella. I mean, she's covered in soot, just like Cinderella, which Cinderella's name means cinder. Um, and this, I think I mentioned to you, this also reminds me of a story called Hans My Hedgehog, where it's another protagonist, this time a boy, that was born with like this hedgehog skin, but he ends up kind of ascending to royalty, but the king is still sort of suspicious of him. And when he's married with the king's daughter, he ends up kind of having that hedgehog kind of skin that he'd had his whole life kind of taken off.
Mm.
And there's this also just there's a lot of structural similarity between that story and this story, although the end is a little different because Hans ends up reuniting with his father. He goes back, and this is sort of different than a lot of the stories. He goes back to his father, who doesn't recognize him, and then Hans reminds him, and then they celebrate, and it's kind of like a prodigal son type of thing,
Oh,
which,
wow.
I think we've seen a lot of stories where like the father forgets the son and it never is connected again. But in Hans, it like connects again, which is interesting too because Hans was rejected his whole life. But anyway, I won't get too much into that story. We might get into it as we're talking about this one. But
Yeah, yeah, and I wouldn't mind doing a whole episode on it too. I remember reading it recently, and I thought it was pretty fascinating, all the different elements in there. So we'll see how that goes. But
mm,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, we definitely don't want her reuniting with the king, the initial the initial king.
yeah,
He seems pretty bad. I think like let's see. I think the first thing is the her mother, the dying queen, forces this promise on the king that
yeah,
he won't marry anyone who is not as beautiful as her and whose hair is not as
yeah,
golden.
yeah,
And that like I don't know that creates something impossible. Like
yeah,
it's unrealistic.
yeah,
It's almost like an inability to grieve, right? Like he should be able to say, "Oh, my wife was beautiful and golden haired, and I missed her and I love her, and that has now left my life. So
yeah,
let's see what new thing life brings my way." But instead, like in the fairy tale, she makes the demand on him and he agrees to it. But I think in life we often make that demand on reality. Like, oh, this must be exactly the same as the thing I lost, or
mm,
I remember it was so perfect. I just need to achieve that same perfection once again. And we ignore, the good things that sort of come our way,
mm,
um, that maybe aren't, perfectly matched to this one perfect thing, but could be just as good if, he could be just as happy with, some brunette princess that is his age and is not his daughter,
yeah,
who maybe isn't as beautiful, but is kinder or
yeah,
something, or more beautiful even. Um, but he gets locked into this. It needs to be the perfect image of my wife. And I feel like
yeah.
that's kind of I don't know, like the original sin or the first break in the natural flow of things that sort of precipitates the whole story.
Yeah, I agree. And it mentions how he was in grief for a long time and his advisors wanted him to get remarried eventually, but it seems like he didn't want to. So he's still in that grief, and it's as if this wish from his late wife is still reverberating in his head or something. It's this idea that he can't get over that death, and then he's sort of still in this terrible state, and then he sees his daughter and he's still like not in his right mind. That's one way that you could think about this story.
Yeah. Yeah, I was looking into apparently this has been turned into like a movie in
Oh
Germany
wow.
and like used in different plays and books and things and
Oh.
that often they will have the first king like literally go mad. Like they'll paint him as, sort of like a King Lear kind of a thing. Like I think in
Mm,
one of them he burns down the palace.
mm,
He's chasing her with a torch and like burns down the palace and burns himself up in the
yeah.
palace and all of that. And I mean, obviously you're going to want to portray this kind of thing negatively because it is so sort of against, I don't even know,
Natural
against
law or
natural law, against everything that's sacred. Um, but I think if we step back from it as a literal story, there's an element that I think like we all do this kind of thing where like the king is stuck on this image of his wife as the means of achieving the happiness that they had together.
Mm,
And he's so obsessed on this image of what had been, this image of the past, that like he can't find a new feeling or the same feeling from a new person. And that twists him to the point where like his daughter, who is like something he should be caring for,
mm,
obviously as the father, but she's also like this new energy, and he's trying like if we look at like the king and the queen, and then the queen, the second king and the princess through like sort of stereotypical masculine feminine, like the older masculine, the king, the father king is a certain like structure, and the feminine, the old queen, is like the energy that's animating that structure.
mm,
And then, we as the audience are sort of like the person that this is happening inside of, if we take it out of psychological things. So the energy, the life force sort of fades from this initial structure, this initial wedding between the two.
mm,
But the thing that was the form that was holding the life force in it, that was sort of animated by it, um, falls, like stays. That doesn't die. It sort of
mm,
holds on to that image, holds on to
mm,
that structure. Um, Almost feels like a zombie thing. Like there's this living
mm,
dead nature to the king. He's not able to
mm,
the king structure is not able to let go, and is trying to force the new energy that comes in to fulfill the role of the old energy and animate this old structure. There's a
mm.
there's a there's a quote by Jesus of I forget where in the New Testament, but it's like you can't put new wine in old bottles.
Yeah,
And I feel
something like
like
that.
like the king is the old bottle and the princess is like the new wine, and the thing being, portrayed through the thing being taught through the portrayal of incest is an attempt to put the new life force in the old structure that is still longing for the old life force that has faded. And so the new life force will not fit there and has to go away, has to go underground,
Mm,
um, and has to kind of make itself hidden and ugly and unattractive so that
mm,
this rapey dad energy is like chased off, is not is avoided as best as she can, and she does. She runs off into the woods, and then in the woods she finds the king, the new king, who is the king of, like, those are his woods.
mm,
So she kind of like she goes off to a new place, and there's the woods being kind of like the in-between place, but then there's sort of the ruling principle that governs this wild place is able to like meet her as an equal rather than as the sort of unnatural pairing that the first attempt was.
mm. Yeah, yeah, I think there's a lot of fruit to that interpretation, and it makes sense that if you're like the first king and you're sort of not able to get over your previous way of life or something bad that's happened to you, that you would, in your sort of lost attempt to re-find life, you might, in your narrow sort of mind way of thinking, you might look for something that looks like what you had before, which is the daughter. And yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's not what you're supposed to do in life. You're supposed to look for the new thing. And when you try to just recreate that thing and be sort of be like a Walking Dead kind of thing doing that, it is, as the advisors said, gonna bring the kingdom to ruin. And like you said, it will escape and go somewhere else, and it has to hide itself. Um, One thing I was curious about you is why the queen um, had said, you know, the original queen had said, "You have to find someone like me." I mean, I have a little bit of thought on this. And you could also interpret this whole thing differently as being sort of core about incest, or about that kind of improper sexuality that is a part of humanity and probably other animals. Um, but do you have thoughts about why the queen had said that?
Mm. I mean, yeah, I mean, the only thing that kind of makes sense to me on a purely like person level, like if we're not making her into a symbol of something, but just on a personal level, at least to start out, is she she doesn't want the husband to find, so she doesn't want him to move on. She wants to still have some kind of hold over him. And like, if you can find someone who looks just like me, then like it's almost like I'm still there and you haven't
Yeah,
abandoned me. And he kind
yeah,
of agrees to that and I'm like, yes, I don't want to abandon you to death. And he's kind of holding on to that as well.
yeah,
Um, so
yeah.
that
That makes
that would
sense.
kind of be my guess. I mean, I'm seeing parallels here between like just to kind of make this a little more relatable because I'm sure not a lot of people are like, oh yes, I can relate with a king who has incestuous desires for his daughter. But the 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 pattern I see being sort of portrayed here is similar to like if you go out on a date with somebody
Mm.
and they tell you that oh you're just like my ex, or they tell you stories about their last, "Well, I just broke up with somebody, it's been like 6 months and like I'm still really sad about her and she used to be really great," and like there's a new person sitting across the table and you're just still focused on
Ruminating.
your ex, yeah, ruminating on your ex, trying to get some sympathy from the person who like they don't care.
Yeah,
They're there to meet you as a person,
that's right.
and so there's this new growing relationship possibility that's there, but you keep insisting on holding on to this old form, this old idea.
Yeah,
And the queen being like, don't marry anyone who's better than me is kind of akin to like your ex calling you, being like, hey, I miss you. It's got that kind of a vibe to it of like, how you been? You want to come over? You know?
yeah,
Um, just that like we know this thing is dead. We know this relationship is dead, but we still want to continue it. We can't grieve it. We can't let it go. We don't want to deal with the pain of it ending. And so we have to sort of trying to keep trying to keep it alive. Um,
yeah.
Something
I
like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And that makes me think of how people are like that sort of in their life and with relationships. I mean, because in a way it makes sense, right? Because you were in that relationship for so many years. It's real to you. You have so many images, thoughts, emotional attachments, and everything. And you said, you know it's dead, but in a way you don't know it, right? And in a way, this first part of the story is a sort of way of how somebody badly dealt with uh, that transition.
Mhm. hmm Yeah,
How,
it's like an unwillingness to grieve, really, for what was lost. Then let it go, and actually
right.
let it go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wonder if in this story there's a clue as to how the king didn't let it go properly. I mean, it says
Mm.
that he kept grieving, and there's not that much detail, but the advisors are kind of like, if you could go with the psychological interpretation, the advisors are maybe sort of like, your wisdom in some way, kind of lightly saying to you, "Hey, guy, you gotta get up. Like, gotta brush your teeth, go outside. You gotta go on with life. The kingdom needs taking care of and needs to move on at some point. Slowly,
Mm.
not in an unhealthy way, but and then they can't find the person that looks just like the wife who died. So it's
Mm.
like the wisdom the advisors are telling you, you need to do something, you need to get remarried, but you're still looking for the same thing you lost. So it's not going to work out. You're not going to
Yeah,
find that thing.
you're hooked on that image, or the king is hooked on that image
Yeah.
here, of what it needs to be perfect, just like it was.
Yeah.
Um, so I mean, I didn't see anything particular in here that was like, oh, this was the moment he made the fatal decision, other than when she's dying, she calls the king and she demands that he promise her that you must promise me, she says, at least in this translation. And then it says, after the king had promised her this, she closed her eyes and died. So it was very much like the last thing that they said to each other. It's got that kind of a weight to it. It was the thing she was holding on to life to get out. So for her, obviously, there's some level of like, oh, I've arranged things. I made the final arrangement, and now I can die. Like there was some sort of buy-in she had on it needing to be this way. Um, and yeah, and then just the father's after the daughter comes of age, the king looked at her one day. Wait. After she had come of age, the king looked at her one day that she resembled his deceased wife in every way, and he suddenly felt a great love for her. Um, the daughter was even more horrified, hoping to dissuade him. She asks for all the things. So she also asks, of some pretty impossible things from him, and he pulls that off, unfortunately, as well. Um, yeah, so yeah, I don't know. There's just this like brokenness to the king, and she can't, the princess cannot. It's just not working. She has to leave. Um, I think of times where in our life, like something has the joy, the eros, the path, the life force in us
Mhm.
has gone away, because the
Yeah.
structure of our life does not support it. I think last time we were doing the zombie one, we were talking about Fight Club too, and I think that scene of like everything's a copy of a copy of a copy. Um, the before Tyler Durden shows up, where the
Mm.
Jack, the nameless main character, is sort of living his worst life,
Mhm.
and being very miserable and not finding a way out of it. Like his life force has gone.
Yeah.
Um,
And he
so
is trying to kind of make it in the bad messages that the culture gives you about doing it through consumerism, or doing it through the image. I mean,
mhm,
again,
mhm.
there's like this, I'm doing the image. Why don't I feel anything?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The image of the wife that has died. Maybe one time, maybe the first time you have a new house and you move into it and you get a new couch and you're like, man, this feels great. But then if you chase that again, you got to get a bigger house and a bigger couch and a bigger house and a
Right.
bigger couch. And then finally you
Yeah.
have like a room that's just sofa cushions. And you're like, this is not how it's supposed to be.
But that's interesting. I mean, images can be very powerful and can really help us. They can help us not veer off too much in the wrong direction. But wonder if maybe there's like the signified and the signifier, which is the image, and the signified, which is some sort of deeper thing that you have to understand. You have to stand under it. It's almost like you have to have your feet on the ground, and the image of the sun, or whatever, the image of a more something more specific maybe than the sun above you, and then you can kind of move forward, or like the stars above you, and you're getting guided like a mariner. But if you only have the image and you're ungrounded, or you're not connected to something behind that image, I'm sort of giving different metaphors here, but it's
Hard to pin
uh,
down.
yeah. And yeah, if you're only going with the image, it's like you're lost. You're not finding out what you need to be doing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so true because it's like the image, the concept, the thing, like we're trying to use it as a guide. Like, okay, I want to try and hit this goal. I don't want to fall short. I don't want to like overdo it, spend too much and more than I need to, more energy, more attention, more time on it than I need to. Like, let's try and hit this goal the right way. Um, and that's not inherently bad. You're better off having some sort of goal or a guideline than you are
Yeah.
not even having an aim or not even trying to do a thing, and you're just, "Oh,
Yeah.
whatever, I'll do whatever." It's like that's
Yeah.
good, but then you kind of have to hold it loosely, maybe. Maybe that's kind of the idea, because it isn't, the goal isn't real. It's something you've imagined and you're trying to see if it's possible. So it's almost like a scientific experiment. Like, I'm going to try and do that. I'm going to make that happen. That's my goal. But if reality shows you that, hey, that thing that you thought was super close is actually like 100,000 miles away, um, and you're like, well, I could still walk there in a day. I thought it was so close. Like, your original idea was that, oh, you could get there. Your goal is to get there. And reality shows you like the way you thought it was isn't possible. This doesn't work. Your image, your dream, your beautiful plan is dead. It doesn't function the way you thought it did. I think an easy real world grounding for this sort of out there idea is like, if you look at a mountain, you can be like, oh, like I could probably walk there. It looks kind of close, if it looks kind of close, or if you look like, I've done a little bit of hiking up a mountain a few times, and it's really weird. Like there's this place, Timberline Lodge, here in Oregon, up on Mount Hood, where you can drive like all the way up above the timberline. It's where the outdoor shots from The Shining are from. So that kind of
Oh, wow.
big, wide hotel. So you can drive all the way up there, easy to get to, and from there you can see the peak of Mount Hood. And you look up and you're like, I don't know, I could probably get there in like 3 hours, 4 hours. Like, it looks
Uh-huh.
close. Like, I've driven all this way up. It's right there. And I've tried a few times to just start walking up the mountain. And like, I'll get to this rise and I'll look up and it'll be just as far away. And I'll be like, okay,
Wow.
when I get to that rise, and I'll spend like 40, 45 minutes and I'll get there, sort of walk up. So, we walk up and then you see the next little cliff and you like kind of walk up there, and it still looks so far away. And it's constantly further away like that. So to bring it back, it's like that our goal might be to do a thing, and we might be madly in love with the idea of, oh, it must look this way. This has made me happy before, or I thought about it and I knew it would make me happy, so I'm going to do it. But when you actually, put your feet on the ground and try and make it happen, it ends up being a lot harder than you thought. And at that point, like, we may be losing the thread from the fairy tale, because I'm not sure it ties back into the fairy tale, but you have to let that idea die. You can't hold on to the concept being what exactly you thought it was, when reality starts telling you it's something different. Now, if you can hold them both and say, okay, what was the thing that I wanted, but how do I make that happen in reality? I want to climb up to that mountain. Oh man, this is taking way longer than I thought. The sun's going to go down soon. I got to turn around and go home, or I'm going to be stuck up here at night. Fuck it, I'm never climbing up the mountain again. Maybe go on the internet and say, hey, what is it? How do I? Oh, Mount
Yeah.
Hood. Turns out you got to have ice axe. You go if you want to actually summit it, you need ropes and climbing gear. You need to leave at like 5 in the morning and hope that you can get timberline at 5 in the morning and hope you can get up there and back before the sun sets during the summer when it's bright and the days are longer. Like, you have to really understand what you're doing, and that's
Yeah.
sort of letting your vision die and be reborn and die and be reborn.
Yeah.
But he
Yeah.
doesn't do that here. He insists on it being the same. And so he mistakes the daughter for the wife and insists that she be the thing she's not at all meant to be. He
Yeah.
doesn't see her for what she is. He doesn't see the reality of her.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right. What you said about the Mount Hood metaphor. Yeah, my way of thinking of it is you have to bring wisdom into it. You can't, the image is very powerful, but images and symbols can be horrifically bad in life in their effect as well as very, very good. The 20th century was maybe the best example of countries being formed around symbols and having a lot of like strength from that, but their aim being terrible.
Hmm.
I was
Yeah.
thinking also of the analogy of the mariner, like with the following the constellations and things, and it's like those are to guide you on Earth,
Mm.
to stay on Earth, and but they're always there. There's a permanence to the image. That's maybe one reason they're so attractive or something like that.
Mm.
They're very readily they very readily become social. Images can, it's hard to like transmit like obscure Buddhist ideas to people, but you can give them an image, um, and so it can be powerful. I w- I think
Yeah,
this
yeah.
that we are staying with the tale. I was thinking of another tale we did recently. I can't remember the name right now, but it's where there's another dying monarch. Remember the story with the prince being in love with a girl, and he's kind of a little away from his dying father, his father,
Oh
the
yeah.
king. And the king is dying, and then he recalls the prince, and he says, like, he gives him like a kind of a deathbed request, like, please marry this other girl. And
Hmm.
then he's like, he's aggrieved, he's confused, and then he's like, okay, I'll do it. And then he forgets about the his original love, and there's this long Byzantine process of him coming back to that. But that
Yeah.
that seems like this. He doesn't know how to take his father's words wisely and to interpret them. Okay, my dad maybe wanted this alliance, and he can decide what to do. Instead, he just full force go dives into those words. And this
Hmm.
is in this story, it seems like Fur of all kinds, it seems like he's doing that too. The king is doing that with his dying wife's wish, and he gets lost in it. And as far as we can tell, he never recovers, and his kingdom never recovers from it. They lose the vitality. They lose his daughter.
Yeah, it's interesting in both cases. The sort of the thing that is lost is like a genuine, healthy love. Like in I think it's the 12 Huntsmen is the one you're talking about.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
the prince loses the true princess, the one he's really in love
yeah,
with, and he marries this other one that he's supposed to.
yeah,
And in this one, like the king marrying the daughter, there's no true, genuine, healthy love there. It's incest, it's unhealthy, it's unnatural.
yeah.
So it's like it's a different
But he lost his
trajectory.
potential, kind of
He
second
lost his
wife.
potential, and the princess has to leave to find. So the first one, like the prince leaves the princess, and in the second one, the princess has to leave to find the real prince.
Yeah,
So it's the same pieces, like in a different order, but you're right, it's a very similar um I don't story, I guess, or cast of characters. There's a lot of overlaps.
yeah. Yeah, and with the 12 huntsmen, the true love from the beginning also has to disguise herself in order to reappear in her true
Hmm.
form, or to get recognized by the prince. And in this
Yeah.
story, like, she's also disguised like Cinderella and everything, although
Hidden.
she
Yeah,
takes
yeah.
off the disguise to like be in this shining form, in the
Hmm.
dresses, like the moon and the sun and the stars, to get recognized. But she still kind of runs away or something like that. But that's different from the 12 huntsmen. But anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, the 12 Huntsmen, the prince, at the advice of the magical lion, the prince, the prince puts the huntsman to the test twice, and then a third thing happens where I forget why, but she gets injured. The actual princess gets injured. He goes and he finds her, and he sees a ring on her finger, which is the same as Ulfr. It's the ring that
Right.
tells who's true, which one is
Yeah.
true. So that's interesting. But there is kind of these three-step processes where like a connection is attempted but not completed, or something is attempted to be revealed but it fails to do so. Um, yeah, and the podcast that I mentioned, they talk about it as like when you're dealing with a traumatized part, or when you're dealing with like, I always just sort of play this role, or I put on this mask, or this is who I just think I'm supposed to be, that this in the same way the princess soots her face up and puts on the ugly coat and like makes herself very unappealing and unattractive to kind of ward off all the unwanted attention. Um, that to move beyond that, you want to kind of like learn to reveal who you really are slowly. So like
Mm.
she'll have the
Mm.
moment where she comes out in the moon dress and she gets to shine. So if it's like, my inner princess, my inner life force, my truth, my reality, I let that out and then I take a break and I go back to the other thing that I'm more familiar with because it feels safe and secure. And then later I take another chance and I let it out. And this time it's not just the moon, which comes and goes and fades. It's the sun, which moves across the sky, but is solid and permanent, right?
Mm.
And then the third one, and then she goes back, and then the third time it comes back out, and it's the stars, which, like you were saying, are both permanent and navigable by. So they can be relied upon to reflect a truth
Mm.
that, the sun doesn't. The sun can tell us like north and south, east and west, but doesn't tell us necessarily a direction the way the stars would.
Mm.
And the moon is kind of all over the place. Like it shows up any time of day.
Mm.
It's a different, it
It's a
shrinks, it waxes, it
reflected light.
wanes, it's
Doesn't make
just
its own
reflected
light.
light. Exactly. Exactly. So it's sort of like I see the three dresses as being sort of like the stages of this new life force sort of revealing itself from out of the trauma in which it was buried.
Mm.
So I think all of our trauma does carry within it something fresh and good that sort of needs that sort of attention to. There's so many fairy tales. Hans the Hedgehog, he needs to take off his skin. This one, she needs to take off her fur. There's one about the lindworm where there's like this worm that comes in, this big like dragony worm thing that comes in, and that skin has to get taken off, and you find out there's a prince under all of that. Beauty and the Beast. I mean, there's so many again and again and again in fairy tales. It's the goodness at the core of the bad thing is, or the ugly thing, or the ashy thing, or the sooty thing. Pretty consistent.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's a pretty powerful metaphor for personal change. You can't just go from where you are to like your better self. Uh completely, but you kind of, I think of it maybe as like playing with it a little bit, like starting to inhabit that new person a little bit, and then kind of going back and then, gradually kind of feeling things out, almost like exposure therapy or something, and seeing what comes back at you if you it's becoming more a part of who you are now, and it's getting more stable in things. Huh.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I have a lot of plants here. Um, my wife and I tend to enjoy the plants, and it's been really interesting seeing them over the past few years, watching them grow, and that they'll grow like that. Like they'll grow and then they'll either stop or sometimes they'll die. And then they'll grow like just right here we got these little ferns. I don't know if it'll focus on them, but we got these little ferns and they were big and green and I think I didn't water them as quickly as they needed,
Hmm.
and they died. Um, and then I watered them, and they shot out a whole bunch of new shoots, and they were green. And I put them in the window, and I think I oversunned them, and everything dried up and got crispy again. And we were both like, "Oh man, the fern's dead." So I just sort of kept it on the table, and I would water it when I watered all the other plants. And then just recently, it started spitting out these new. Let's see if I can
Kind of on the
these
side.
yeah, these
Yeah, I'd
the
say,
new green kind of in the bottom here, and there's some
yeah.
around the back too. It just slowly is putting out these new little, they're ferns, so they're doing the little fiddlehead curl.
Hmm.
And it's just fascinating to see life sort of do this, like it grows and then it rests, and then it grows and then it rests. It's almost like it's breathing. Like there's some time lapse you can find on YouTube of like plant growth, and
Hmm.
oftentimes it'll look like the plant is breathing, like
Hmm.
and it just kind of like I think there is something to that about our own growth as a personality or as a soul, whatever it is that you want to.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think learning is like that. There's a kind of consolidation period. There's like uh taking things in, and then kind of a consolidation period, and then new growth, and there's like a pruning of certain old ideas or something like that. Yeah, I think even what's that idea in evolution? Periodic. I forgot, but it's like evolution doesn't just go, it isn't just a linear thing. It sort of plateaus for a while and then, but that's
Yeah, they're like
probably,
moments of massive mutation, and then everything's kind of the same, and then kind of,
yeah,
yeah,
something like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I think punctuated equilibrium.
Yeah. Yeah.
My
You're right.
brain
Yeah.
is pulling up those words. I don't know
Nice.
how long ago I filed
No,
those,
that's
but
what I
they've
was
been
trying
there.
to think of.
Cool. All right. Cool. 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 It's nice
But
when
in
that happens. Go ahead.
Sorry, but in terms of like in the way we're interpreting it with this story or Hans Hedgehog, it's like the fur mantle that they're wearing is kind of like you could say it's trauma or it's an old person that that you've been for a while. It's a protective kind of persona that you have or something. And
Mm,
then you're looking to grow into a new way and eventually that kind of fades away. That's gone in some way. But in this story and with Hans Hedgehog, that has many similarities to this story, there is a sense in which that skin has to be forced off in some way at the end. Like there is this throughout the story, there is this sort of growth away from the skin, but there is a sense in which it has to be forced off in some way. Like in Fur of All Kinds, this story, the prince, or excuse me, the king, he glimpses the star bright dress underneath the fur. And then as she's trying to get away, he rips it off. He rips
mm,
off the mantle.
mm,
And in Hans Hedgehog, he instructs the king like on his wedding night with the king's daughter, and he's like glimpsing his naked body and stuff. And that's funny things, but he
great.
tells the king or his king's advisors to like, okay, so I'll be sleeping. You might have an interesting interpretation of this because like he's sleeping with the princess. With he's going to be married, I think, in earlier versions. There's like they sleep together before the marriage, but you know.
Okay. Yeah. Gotta proper it up. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like in later versions, they make it more proper. But so he's sleeping with his like beautiful human form, and his hedgehog skin is next to the bed, and he instructs the king's advisors to take it, and then they have to burn it, and they have to like really watch it and make sure it's really burned or something like that. But
Mm,
anyway, there might be an interesting interpretation of that. But in both these tales, it seems like there's this idea that there does have to be some final action by by the king's advisors to force it off at the very last. I mean,
mm.
what do you think of that?
Oof. One thing I want to say, that's a very deep, at least the things that are coming up to say, I'm like, ooh, that's a lot. But I do want to say that you were talking about like the Hans Hedgehog and the fur and all this being like an old identity to get rid of.
Mm, mm,
And I think in this story in particular, it's worth pointing out that like she puts on this identity
mm,
as a protection and as a deterrent from unwanted attention.
mm,
So it's not just like, oh, this worked for me at one point and I've outgrown it, but I'm still clinging on to it. It's
mm.
like, oh, I needed this desperately at one point to
Yeah,
be safe. And I think actually, I think that that might point to
yeah,
like why it's hard because she's invested in the cloak, the fur as a protection thing.
yeah,
And like I don't think it's good to rip away people's protection. I will say that. I'm not trying to map this as like actual human behavior, but if this is internalized and there is some sort of higher force within us that is encouraging us to, slowly begin to come out of our protection, there is going to be a point where we we have to like almost have it taken out of our own hands.
yeah,
Like there has to be some level of surrender to something higher because the
yeah,
thing we're trying to
yeah,
get rid of is so a part of our identity that
yeah.
we don't really know what's us and what's it and how to let go of it. So I think I'll just leave it at that. The other stuff I was going to get into was pretty esoteric and like very heavily Buddhist and weird, just on top of some podcast I was listening to this morning, but it's not different. Like it's the trying to get rid of the identity that we've clung to. Um, I don't know that we can do that ourselves. I think it has to be
Yeah.
something higher than us that convinces us. And even if you want to bring it back down to like, the girl that was threatened with incest and had to hide and make herself ugly and all of that. Like, um, again, not to say someone literally needs to come and
Sure,
take her
sure.
security away, but for her in that moment, like she has to have the new, like her new personality come up in her to the point where she can rest in that new personality and cast the old one away. And that is that is allowing your identity to be taken by, like, your sense of self to be taken in by the new identity so that the old one can be led away. Like there is a surrendering, there is a dying there that needs to happen. It's almost like that's the moment where the like something actually is allowed to die. The way the initial king did not allow his wife to die, and like that was sort of the spark for the whole tale to unfold the way it unfolded. At the very end, there is something that dies and is removed and is gotten rid of, and what was hidden is brought to life again. Like life comes back again. And so there, I don't know. I'm just seeing that kind of odd mirroring of the two,
Yeah.
the first moment and the last moment of the story.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think there is something about parents passing on to kids their sort of, and this is probably Jungian, there's sort of things that they couldn't let go of. And keep in mind, the fur is the fur of all kinds. It is the fur made from all the animals of the kingdom. So all the anima, all the life of the kingdom in some way that the king has sort of domain over in his territory that he's also sort of supposed to take care of in some way that he's not because he's like grieving over his lost wife. Now his daughter takes on all that stuff as a kind of protection and has to go to another kingdom.
Yeah, yeah. She's kind of protected by the kingdom itself,
Yeah.
and by the remnants of it too, because it's the fur
Yeah.
of the animals. So like the life has been taken and they've been skinned, and that fur has become the cloak. And yeah, the
Yeah.
remnants of the kingdom itself kind of are cloaking her.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
neat.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. Yeah, it's like she's protected by all of reality almost, except for the one person who's supposed to have the mind to protect her and to help her flourish, which is the king. I mean, there's an implication like with her dresses that like reality, her one dress is like the moon, one dress is like the sun, one dress is like the stars, and his advisors are also telling him not to do this. And she has all the seamstresses make this cloak, and the hunters have to hunt the animals and get the little pieces of the fur. It's like all the kingdom except for her own king is kind of helping her out. And it's
Yeah.
interesting she can all put that in a nutshell. Just maybe like something about the resilient genius ability of human beings to kind of survive in life despite the
Yeah.
worst circumstances.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that. I love that you brought it up, and I love that when I read the story that it's in a nutshell, because it's this grand. It's like, and it's not the fur cloak, although maybe she could put that in the nutshell, but she's wearing that. Like the
Mm,
what's being held in the little nutshell is like the lunar dress, the solar dress, the starry dress, and then like the three golden, which is, obviously gold. There's all the metaphors around gold being like
yeah.
unstainable and pure and all of that.
Mm,
The three golden things are all in this little nutshell. So all the good sort of heavenly, literally heavenly bodies and sort of immortal, unperishing items are stored in this little tiny nutshell at the heart of, like, that I'm sure she's like carrying in a pocket of the giant fur coat that she's, her big sort of like, "Rah," I'm ugly, I'm smelly, I'm furry and hairy, I'm covered in soot, and her sort of gross costume. The heart of it is this beautiful, unstained, pure thing that she carries with her. And I think that, to my mind, that is the best way to try and approach something traumatic. that we carry inside ourselves, the our version of the I'm dressed up in a coat because of this thing that happened, and I have to be this way, and I have to do this because if I don't, this terrible thing is going to happen. That somewhere in that is something pure and good and heavenly and true, and that you don't want to try and push it all away. You want to try and find that
Mhm.
good thing and help it to express itself. So then the need for the cloak and everything else can finally drop away.
Yeah. Yeah, I think yeah, that that shows the progression of this sort of metaphor for the good things in the soul. You're taking it from all the good things in the world, or it is from all the good things in the world. We are, after all, made of atoms that were made in stars, and it goes from being something that's little tiny you carry hidden, and then you put it on, and it's more and more revealed over the course of the story. Eventually it's taken off. And I wanted to get back to the king ripping it off at the final part, as well as in Hans Hedgehog when the king's advisors burn it. I thought that's a good move because so I mean psychological, you think of it as trauma. I think that's a useful way of thinking about it. I also think about it as just, change and development and sort of being smaller to being larger. You
Mm,
can think of it being smaller to larger in terms of your area of concern. Like when you're 2 years old, you're extremely egocentric. Ideally, as you mature, you become more and more, your area, your cone of concern is more and more broad to eventually
mm,
maybe a lot of all of humanity or something like that, or all living beings or something like that. Um, and uh, the end with the fur of all kinds in this story being taken off by the king, or in Hans Hedgehog it being burned by the advisors, is kind of like you're ready, you're finally connecting truly with the world outside of your own
mm,
body. And it's trustworthy. Um, and yeah, it's just simple. It's like you're connected. Um, and it can do something that would otherwise maybe, yeah, feel like you weren't ready for it, like earlier in the story. With Hans Hedgehog, it's funny because he was born with his skin, and he is
mm,
rejected from birth. It's kind of interesting because he has this, uh, his father had been, I think they had been childless. His father was like a countryman, so like a peasant, I guess, but like a kind of wealthy peasant or something.
mm,
And but then he'd been made fun of because he doesn't have a kid. So then he wants to have a kid, but it's like maybe it's the wrong reasons. It's sort of,
mm,
again, bringing a lot of these stories start with a wish, but some of the wishes, like with Snow White, her mother wishes for this beauty that's kind of like connected with the outside world and with elements. Uh, but then the human world kind of messes it up. But with this story, it's like the countryman, he wishes for a child, even if it's as ugly as a hedgehog or something like that. He's like, I just want a kid. I just want to not be made fun of and be ridiculed anymore by my peers. And then
mm.
so nature is like, okay, here's your Hans hedgehog baby. And it's like, oh crap, I didn't mean it, or, and they stuck with it. And
Yeah.
he like hides him behind the stove for 8 years. And Hans ends up being this like plucky kind of satyr type guy. He leaves. He's like riding a chicken. He tends these sheep in the woods. It's a great story. I guess you read it maybe, but
A
yeah,
little bit ago, but it doesn't matter.
yeah, but it's interesting because he has his skin, his protective sort of prickly skin that he can actually attack people with, with the hedgehog
Mm.
skin. Uh, and until it came from his birth. So
Yeah, yeah. Um, that is interesting because it's not I mean, I guess it would if we're mapping it onto, something psychological, it would have to be something like a legacy burden, like an ancestral thing or something like that that got passed down. Because if you're born with it, that's not the same as Alfer here, who asks for this to be made. When it's made, takes it, dresses herself in it, hides in it. It's all very purposefully created for her in response to a need that she genuinely has.
Hmm.
Um, and yet the removal process is similar,
Hmm.
is the same. Um, I also thought it was interesting when you were saying like Hans Hedgehog is able to attack people, with the spikes. I was like, well, where does the fur come in as an action instead of just as a costume? And I realized the cook tells her several times, like, you better not drop any hairs in in the soup, in the bread soup,
Mm.
which what the heck is bread soup? But that's
Hmm.
I've never heard of bread soup. But that's just gonna get soggy. But that's the threat is like if the fur is like her ugliness is her undesirability, whatever it is, it's like, oh, don't let that um corrupt the soup. Don't let your ugliness get into the thing that you're making. And what she does drop in the soup is is the gold ring, the gold spinning wheel, and the gold reel, which I'm not even sure what that is, but that's fine. The three gold items is what she drops in the soup. So it's almost like it. I don't know if it would be cooler if it actually did this, but it's like the fur, the ugliness that she coats herself in, drops into the soup and is seen as purity instead. It's like it
Oh, that's
reveals
interesting.
its
Yeah.
its initial its original innocence. Her
Yeah.
original like goodness is seen as like that's the thing she drops in the soup instead
Yeah.
of the fur. But then the fur can be seen in that way, and that points back to her own as well. So
No, I like that a lot. And it makes sense that the cook sees the fur going, I mean, sees the potential for the fur going in the soup. The king sees the golden stuff in the soup. And
yeah,
then
yeah,
he
yeah,
can
yeah.
see who she really is. The cook only sees what her current position is.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, the cook is very caught in the display. And
Yeah.
the king, if we have him as sort of the higher force of the realm, then yeah, he's able to kind of slowly understand the situation. He has more wisdom, like you were saying.
Yeah, and I do see one interpretation of this story as this at the beginning of the story, all kinds of fur is she's close to the top, close to the king, but then has to go away because things aren't right there. So she has to descend and she fully descends to where she's hidden with this smelly fur at nighttime in the woods, goes in the hollow of a tree, is tied to a carriage or tied to their cart or whatever, sort of like kind of like a base, kind of a slave kind of thing. And then
Mhm.
she has to, she's she's in the castle kitchen, the sort of noisy, loud, hot, steaming, people yelling kind of place in a nook there and being yelled at by the chef. Kind of the chef is kind of jealous of her later because she makes a better bread pudding or bread soup than he does. It's kind of the parallels there with the stepsisters and stepmom of the of Cinderella.
Mm.
It's sort of like the people maybe have some relation to the king, but do not have sort of, I don't know, high-minded ambition or high-minded thoughts or something like that. Don't see things truly, however you want to say it,
Mhm.
are jealous of the person who's destined to rise.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's great. That's great because it like you're right. She's right next to the king, and then she descends from there to like about as she basically becomes an animal. I mean,
Yeah.
she's mistaken for one by the
Right.
huntsman
Yeah.
in the hollow tree that she's sleeping in. Um, and then yeah, it's like then she's moved up from animal to like lowest servant, and she's living in the new castle in a dark place where there's no light under the stairs, just this little nook, this little like nowhere place, this tiny little place. So her place within the castle is kind of akin to the stuff that's in the nutshell. Like she's
Mm.
this tiny little thing hidden away in the castle, just like the beauty is hidden in the nutshell that she's carrying. So it's like
Yeah.
it's mirroring, and then things happen where she gets to the point where she's able to like come out and reveal herself, but then she has to go back in.
Yeah.
And that's there. And then there's that sort of return and that growth process. Um, that's how it works in alchemy. I think that you start with the base material. You start with lead, you start with shit, you start with the primal material, you start with whatever, like the dirt of it, and you collect that in a container and you cook it like you with your attention, I guess, or there's alchemy is a little hard to summarize, but
Mm.
you start with the base matter. That's always the beginning of alchemy, and that's what what we're seeing here is the life force having to retreat to the base matter, and we see why. In this case, it's the incest, but for whatever reason, it gets stuck. It's not there. And then for if both kings are seen as sort of maybe just the masculine part of the psyche or whatever it is that's longing for union with the life force, the first one couldn't manage it, so the life force had to go away. So then that principle takes on the new body of the new king, and he has to go all the way down and find her as an animal in the woods at night in a
Mm.
hollow.
Yeah.
So like that's where we have to go and find the thing that we're missing.
Yeah.
It kind of advises us that way as yeah.
Yeah, I think that's right. And in terms of personal development, it seems it makes sense that she will work for a long time in a low place. You know, she's working very hard, she's getting boots thrown at her, she's getting criticized. I don't know if that's a little like Zen monks, how much they have to uh like do cleaning and get criticized even and stuff like that, but I think there's something to that, kind of developing that discipline through hard work and not getting rewarded at all, not getting praised at all, and being low, being dirty even. I think there's something to that in terms of personal development.
Yeah, I think so. The way I would word that, my understanding of it is just like if you're doing personal development, whether that's, you know, an anger management course or Zen Buddhism, like you're trying to develop something, if you're doing it because you're trying to get a certain result,
Yeah.
it's not going to work. You have to be willing to do the work for the sake of the work, and then let the result be up to something else. That's the only way you're going to have any kind of success. If you're constantly chasing if you're constantly chasing the image of what you think it's going to be, you're still kind of stuck in that role of the first king chasing the images.
Yeah. Do you think a lot of I do. Do you think a lot of people make the mistake of kind of, yeah, looking for the praise, looking for the image of what they think uh they're supposed to be achieving way too early? And that's kind of the problem. And this story kind of shows that you need to work in the kitchen for a long time under a jealous, mean chef, something like that. That's kind of an image to maybe remind us to to work and work before we can really come into our own. I sort of think of like meditation, where seemingly a lot of people have this idea of like, I would just want to feel good. I just want to feel peaceful. It's
Mhm.
not about developing yourself and kind of having a lot of time where you feel like you don't know what you're doing. You feel like you're not progressing. Things are getting worse, maybe. And then, but you keep kind of keeping with it. You know, exercise, same thing. Any
Yeah.
virtue, same thing, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think um I don't even know if I have anything to add to that. Just that it does in all these cases it takes more time than we think it's going to. And I don't know. I think I'm thinking of, my newsletter that is now back up and alive again, thekindknife.com. Check it out. that like I was trying to write it originally for myself, but I did find myself getting discouraged by sort of the lack of any kind of response. So I had already sort of been like, okay, this might not get me famous right off the bat, if ever. Like that's not okay, I can put that aside. But I had thought like, oh, at least maybe I can get some engagement from whomever is, whomever. And sort of consistently not a lot of engagement. Um, Subscribership was kind of growing, but still no engagement. And I made a big push to try and get some engagement at one point, and it didn't work. And that after that, I was at a point of like, I can't keep doing this, and I didn't for a few months. Um, and with your help, we're doing this writing thing, that we're doing.
Yeah. Help me too.
I've gotten back on it, writing every day, and some of that's been published. So I'm not sure exactly what it is, but like that was akin to like the first go around is like the princess coming out in the moon dress or whatever. And then like that didn't work and it has to go away. And I'm still like I still haven't quite gotten the thing right. And now here it is. I'm doing it again. I'm enjoying it more. I'm not making it as big of a thing. I'm making it easier for me to do so I can get more out there because that's just what I seems to be what needs to happen. And so, you know, um, I'm not as discouraged by the lack of response as I was before. So something has shifted, something has maybe, died and gone away, or some part of it has shifted. Um, so I don't want to say that like you can't have a goal in mind. I guess it's similar to the mountain metaphor I was talking about
Yeah.
earlier. Like you can have a goal in mind, but you have to let reality dictate when success happens, how it works, and you have to
Yeah.
go along with reality's plan rather than insist that reality go along with your plan
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
won't work.
Yeah. Yeah, it won't work, and you could destroy everything. You could, ruin a job or a relationship or whatever because you're not going with how thing with your fate. You're
Hmm.
instead going, yeah, with that old dead image.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, you're insisting it look the way you want it to look. You're insisting that meditation gets you what you think it's going to get you
Yeah.
instead of, whatever it is actually going to get you.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's really good. Yeah, I didn't think of all this stuff for this story. Do you have anything to add to this? It's a good lesson for
Uh,
life.
yeah. Do I have anything to add? I definitely did not have all of this coming in. This has been pretty good, pretty very rich. I'm stalling to try and see if I have anything to add. Um, I thought it was interesting. I don't know. We'll see if there's anything to this. I liked that in the third grand ball the king throws. I was seeing each ball as like a moment where all the parts,
Mm,
like if the castle, if the kingdom, if whatever it is like the psyche of a person, the balls are like where all the parts come out and interact. Like there's this
mm,
sort of mingling and mixing. And so
mm.
even the ugly little kitchen girl covered in fur and soot, like even
Yeah.
she is drawn in. Like she could have just hid. She wanted to go and see. She wanted to go and
Yeah.
see the ball. So it's this space that kind of calls that part of ourselves out.
Yeah.
But then in the third ball, the king's like already kind of catching on to what she's
Yeah.
doing. And the king's like, okay, I think it even, at least in my translation, it says that he had them when she comes out to dance, he's arranged it so that that
That's
dance goes on particularly long.
that's right.
And
Yeah.
so there's like an attempt at um in the good sense of the word of seduction of like, oh, like she keeps coming back. We have these grand dances together. There's something magnetic drawing me to her. She keeps coming to dance with me. When we dance, there's music, there's whatever it is. I feel this thing, and
Yeah.
like I need to take action on this, and he does, and he creates a space where she like where that feeling is allowed to exist longer, and then he manages to put a ring on her finger without her noticing, which I mean, I don't want to take it too literally because it's a fairy tale, but like it kind of implies she was pretty distracted, you know. Maybe in love with him, maybe like, in the heat of the moment, they're holding hands while they're dancing, and
Yeah.
she's just like feeling the vibes, and he's able to like just slip the ring on really casually without her being. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, I did have something to say about this. It would make sense that, traumatized people generally have a very high, like they got to be aware at all times. They're
Hmm.
very, there's a
Hmm.
blanket on the word. Um,
Hypervigilance, maybe.
Hypervigilance, vigilance. Yeah,
One
they have a
step down
very
from
high
paranoia.
vigilance.
Hmm.
Exactly. Exact. Thank you. That was the word. So in this moment with the prince, her vigilance is down enough that she doesn't notice him put the ring on. Like she must,
Yeah.
it kind of implies something about her has relaxed and is like open
Yeah.
and like, kind of ready to drop the fur coat, ready to come out from under the stairs, ready to be the princess again in this new castle,
Yeah.
that is the right fit for her.
Yeah.
And yet it is the king, because of the king's wiliness around extending the dance, she still has to run
Right.
away. So she may, some parts of her may be ready, but she's not. So he ends the dance. She runs away. He doesn't call the guards on her. He doesn't insist on anything.
Yeah.
But she runs away, but she doesn't have time to put her whole thing back on. So he's had it be that she like her real self is almost forced to to reveal itself. It's sort of
Yeah.
like your costume is now too small for you. There's not enough room. The goodness has grown to the point where the costume can't hide it anymore.
Yeah.
And then she does the thing with the soup again, which she doesn't need to do. And then she drops the gold thing in the soup again. So there's the soup, the communication between her and the king. It's very subtle, it's symbolic, it's not language, but it's a look, I am pure and good and true. Look at the soup, it's delicious. Look at this gold that's in the soup, it's pure. Um, and that there's the flow of information between those two parts of the psyche. And so then when the king is like brings her forth the third time, I'm sure he's already suspecting what's going on, and he
Hmm.
sees, oh, she didn't manage to cover one of her fingers in the soot, and she's wearing the ring on that finger, and like just this one little element of the truth is poking through, and he's able to sort of grasp onto that and pull the truth out of all of the lies it had cloaked itself in for survival.
Hmm.
And like that's a really beautiful moment, and I think really beautifully played by the prince, if we sort of give him at least the credit, the benefit of the doubt that he's, being considerate of her and is not. Because you could tell the story, they're so simple, you could tell the story in a way where he's forcing her out, and if we give the benefit of the doubt
Hmm.
that he's not doing that,
Hmm.
I think it's a pretty beautiful like coaxing of the beauty and the innocence and the life force and the joy and all of that, coaxing it out of where it's been hiding while respecting its need to hide, and kind of having this
Yeah.
this play of back and forth and back and forth. Whereas the father in the first case was like, "No, you're marrying me, and that's it."
Yeah.
Much more insistent.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, when he had decided she does, when the king and the original king, her father, had decided to marry her, she does all this stuff, and the whole kingdom does all this stuff to stop that in some way. And then yeah, he's like, never mind all that, disregard all the evidence before his eyes for him to change. And he
Mhm.
instead just, yeah, we're getting married the next day. But yeah, this prince here, he's working with what he has. She's working there, everybody's working, and they're getting closer and closer and revealing before the union.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a great last thought. Maybe next time Hans Hedgehog or something else. We're returning, but before that, we're returning to the zombie story, right? The
I would love to, yeah, get
Vervaeke.
back on the Vervaeke zombie book. Yeah, yeah, I'd love to do
Yeah.
that. Chapter one in that for next week. Yeah, so we can plan for that after the
Yeah,
recording.
sounds
But
great. Well,
eh,
great talking to you today, and
likewise,
really learned a lot about this story.
same.